The sky turned black at noon. Ash fell like snow. The air burned. Some ran, some prayed, some never moved again. In a matter of hours, Pompeii vanished, buried beneath a mountain's wrath. No warning, no escape, just silence, and then ash. For nearly 2,000 years it lay entombed, frozen in time. Loaves still in ovens, paintings still on walls, bodies still reaching for the ones they loved. This is not just a story of destruction. It's a story of a city that lived until its final breath, and what the ashes chose to remember. The day began like any other. The sun rose warm and golden over Campania. Shadows stretched across the tiled roofs of Pompeii as the streets slowly came alive. Bakers stoked their fires. Merchants rolled back awnings on their market stalls. Children played in the alleyways. Lovers parted at doorways. The smell of bread and olive oil drifted through the courtyards. It was late October, 79 AD. The harvest had just passed. The evenings were cooler. Shadows stretched longer across Pompeii's streets as the sun rose over the Bay of Naples. For centuries, they had lived in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, a looming, tree-lined giant just a few miles away. It had been quiet for longer than memory could recall. To the people of Pompeii, it wasn't a threat. It was a neighbor, a landmark, a backdrop. The earth had trembled before, most notably in 62 AD, when a violent earthquake cracked temples and knocked statues from their pedestals. The city had been damaged, but not destroyed. Life had gone on. In fact, much of Pompeii in 79 AD was still under repair, scaffolds against villas, piles of stone beside unfinished columns. Some called it a city rebuilding, others, a city forgetting. In the weeks leading up to the eruption, strange things had started happening. Dogs howled at night, birds fell silent, springs dried up. Some claimed to smell sulfur in the air. October brought cooler air to Campania. The harvest was done, markets full. No one in Pompeii sensed what was coming. Pompeii was not a rural outpost. It was a thriving Roman city with a population of about 20,000, wealthy, cosmopolitan, filled with life and pleasure. It had temples to Jupiter and Venus, public baths, a gymnasium, theaters, a bustling forum, and behind the respectable Roman facades, brothels, gambling dens, bars where locals scratched graffiti on the walls after one cup too many. "I screwed the barmaid," one man had written on a tavern wall. "Secundus likes boys," said another. "Beware of the dog," warned a mosaic at the entrance of a wealthy home. Humor, pride, vulgarity, caution, all etched into stone. In a bakery, loaves of bread were shaped and slid into the oven. They would never be taken out. In a villa, a slave girl washed the feet of her mistress. In the forum, a politician argued over the price of grain. Somewhere, someone was falling in love. Somewhere else, someone was being sold. And in the distance, the mountain slept. Or so they believed. Across the bay, in the town of Misenum, a teenage boy named Pliny sat reading. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, was the commander of the Roman fleet. The younger Pliny would later write 2 letters describing what he saw and heard in the days to come. His words remain our only surviving eyewitness account of the eruption. But on that morning, there was no reason for alarm. Just another day. Around midday, something shifted. A column of smoke and ash began to rise from the summit of Vesuvius. At first, people stared, curious, puzzled. Pliny the Younger described it as a cloud shaped like a pine tree, a towering trunk of smoke with branches spreading outward at the top. Some climbed to their rooftops for a better view. The mountain was erupting, but no one knew what that meant. There was no word in Latin for volcano. The Romans did not understand the power that lay beneath Vesuvius. They had no knowledge of pyroclastic flows or tectonic plates. The only stories they had were myths of angry gods, punished cities, and omens in the sky. In Pompeii, ash began to fall. Not enough to panic at first, like dust, like snow. The air turned grainy. People covered their mouths with cloth. Some laughed, some cursed, some prayed. But the column grew taller, darker. The ash thickened. Roofs began to sag under the weight. Daylight dimmed to a deep, unreal twilight. Lamps were lit at noon. Still, many stayed. Where would they go? The roads were clogged. The sea was churning strangely. Some believed it safer to remain inside. They didn't know they were standing in the path of death. In the hours to come, some would try to flee. Some would suffocate. Some would be struck by falling stones. For now, life in Pompeii had not yet ended. But it was already slipping away. And no one, not the baker, not the senator, not the child chasing a dog down the street, knew that they were being watched by history. They called it noon, but the sun had vanished. In the forum, a market stall lay overturned, a sandal crushed beneath fallen plaster, fruit rolled across stone. A woman called out for her child. Her voice rose into the ash-filled air, then vanished in the roar of the collapsing world. The ash no longer drifted. It poured, hot, stinging, coating every surface, burning the throat with each breath. People tied cloths over their mouths if they could. Eyes watered. The air was thick and dry, like breathing dust from a kiln. In the narrow streets, roofs began to give way. First, it was the sound of tiles sliding, then a series of sharp cracks, wood beams giving out, walls splitting open, homes folded in on themselves. A family crouched in their courtyard was plunged into blackness, and then into silence. There was no escape, no direction to run that didn't lead into more falling stone. The sky had turned to ink. Lamps flickered where daylight should have been. Still, many stayed. They remembered the tremors from years ago. They believed this too would pass. Some crowded into temples, kneeling before marble gods. Others stood quietly in doorways, staring at the ash. But no sign came from above. Only dust. Near the Nola Gate, an elderly senator took his slave boy's hand and stepped into the storm. Ash settled on his shoulders like snow. He walked slowly, chin raised. When his remains were found, he was kneeling, still holding the boy's fingers in his own. At the harbor, the sea had drawn back from the land. Boats tilted in the exposed mud. A few men tried to drag them forward, shouting across the wind. But the sea did not return. It waited, unnaturally still. Across the bay in Misenum, Pliny the Elder ordered his fleet to sail toward the chaos. The ships pressed forward, sails straining, men shouting through smoke. But the wind turned. Thick clouds rolled in from the mountain, too dense to push through. They turned back. He would not survive the night. In one bakery, bread still sat cooling in its pan. The baker had fled minutes before. The oven remained hot. The bread would harden there, never touched again. In a small house behind the forum, a young girl, barefoot, holding a clay lamp, searched for her sandals. The light wavered as the ground shook. A man shoved past her, bare-chested, covered in ash. He didn't look back. On Vicolo di Balbo, a boy chased his dog into the gloom. He called its name again and again. He never came back. In a villa on the edge of town, a woman pressed her wedding ring into her husband's hand. "If I don't make it," she said. He nodded, wordless. A wall fell between them a few minutes later. With each hour, Pompeii grew smaller. Not in walls or space, but in choice. Streets filled with debris. Fires started where lamps were dropped. Some people crawled into basements. Others huddled together in kitchens, under tables by fountains. Some whispered. Others closed their eyes. A man scratched one final sentence into the wall using a broken nail. "Nothing is left. Nothing more." By early afternoon, Vesuvius could no longer hold the weight of the sky it had torn open. The column collapsed. What came next moved faster than sound. Hot gas, pulverized stone and ash in a flood that tore down everything in its way. Trees were shredded. Buildings blew apart. Those caught in it didn't have time to run. Some didn't have time to breathe. But that was still to come. For a few more moments, choices remained. A woman named Julia ran with her brother through the temple of Isis. He tripped on the stairs. She turned around. She didn't hesitate. A slave named Lartius opened the cage of his master's doves. He whispered, "Fly." Then he ran. A merchant, waist-deep in dust, filled 3 jugs with water from a public fountain. "For whoever needs it," he said. He died with grit in his lungs and soot on his teeth. And then came the wind. It screamed down from the mountain, dry and hot. It carried with it a smell no one could name. The sky turned from gray to red, then black. It wasn't night. It was something else entirely. The kind of dark that settles in the bones. People curled up wherever they could, in corners, under beams. Some still believed they'd live, others did not. Children asked questions. Their parents gave quiet lies. And then, stillness. Just a moment. No one moved. There was no more Rome, no Senate, no trade, no law. Only the mountain, the ash, and the weight pressing down from above. Pompeii was disappearing, not all at once, but breath by breath. Yet something else was happening too. The ash preserved it all. The bread, the letters on the wall, the frescoes and fountains and jewelry, the ring in a clenched hand, the child in the doorway, as if the land itself had chosen to keep them, unmoving, untouched, remembered. They believed they were dying unseen. But they weren't. History was there, watching.